Welcome to another Tim Cain reaction. This time, taking risks. We're talking in chat right now about breaking into the industry and trying to make something ethical to players. And I think taking risks is one of those things that if you want to become successful in game development, you are going to have to take risks. If you want to become somebody who is known and means something, you're going to have to take risks literally every single year, sometimes every single month. You're going to have to do something that people weren't expecting and that everybody in your family and your friends tells you that you shouldn't do. It just becomes more and more competitive. Let's see what Tim has to say on it.
Hi everyone, it's me, Tim.
Hi Tim.
Today I want to talk about taking risks. I'm going to do this on a fun Friday because it's not directly about game development, but of course all my stories are game development related because it's all I've ever done. But what I've noticed is
just the way he said, it's about game dev because that's all I've ever done. Man, that hits the feels. Anybody who's a game dev in chat knows that.
Especially recently, more and more people are going, developers need to take more risks. Why aren't they taking more risks? A lot of them say it very flippantly. Like, come on, just take a risk.
Just take a risk.
Why are you guys so cautious? Just take.
Come on, game devs in chat, just take a risk. Just make a game that has no market presence. Just do it. Just invent new genre, chat. Come on, it's so simple. I will take all the risk. Just jump off the bridge, take the risk. That's a good way to put it. I mean, that's pretty true though. I can get the sentiment, but it's a disconnect between what game. I think gamers and developers who are passionate want the exact same thing. The problem is, to take a risk, you have to get paid for the risk. And if anybody who's tried pitching to publishers in the last 3 years, which I have, zero risk taking, no risks. Where's your game? Why isn't it complete? I won't fund a prototype. Give me your beta. Is it already? Do you have a release date set? Do you have a team? Do you already have all the money you need to finish the game? Okay, then maybe we'll give you money, but probably not. I've been taking risks for years and it's been bad. It's so bad. Because to get paid first, then take the risk. It's the person who paid risk. And I hope that we see a shift in the industry because I do want to see more developers getting paid for risks. Clearly, we see that every time that the market analysts, which don't know shit, and the investors, which don't know shit, try to make a prediction, they fail, like they always have because they're dumb. And instead of being dumb, how about they be smart and invest $1 million into a small studio whose ROI is like 10,000%, than the 100 million into a company whose ROI is at best 200%. And that's if they actually manage to succeed. Please, please, please. In order for developers to take risks, you need investors to take risks. And investors aren't taking risks because right now they have the pick of the litter. They see hundreds, if not thousands of games every year, and they do not have to pick. They can take the least risky options. So if gamers want it, they need to appeal to the investors and to the publishers, not to the developers. The developers aren't taking risks because they aren't allowed to, because they're working on shoestring budgets. They can't afford it. They want to take risks. They want to do something new. They want to do something fresh, but that requires prototyping. It requires iteration. Prototyping and iteration are money, lots of money and time. Create a studio, take a $100 million loan, create a new game, bankrupt. You will be lucky if you make a new game studio and say, yes, we have a 3-year dev cycle, so you won't see profits for 3 years. Okay, so how much do you want? We need $3 million. That's not very much, by the way, for game dev. Okay, we can give you $300, and also 50% of your profits are ours. That okay? Oh, it's not okay. Looks like I'm gonna go to somebody else then.
Take some risks. And I even have 2 videos on game development caution. And I'll link those below.
Yep.
So you can kind of see this video as maybe the other side. I know a lot of people linked those videos and did reaction videos and argued for or against them. I'm now going to kind of take the other side and say, let's talk about risk and what it means to take risk in the game development sphere.
This is a very important video that I think needed to be made sooner. I'm really glad that Tim is doing it. The market is oversaturated. Game development may be a job, a craft not for everyone. There's a lot of other jobs and crafts out there that pay good money. I've learned like crane operator earns $35 an hour in the USA. I'm thinking about taking it. I will say what I've always said, and it's the harshest reality. I know that people loved when Pirate Software was glazing up game development and saying, if you can dream it, you can do it. You know, hashtag Ratatouille. I don't know, whatever the fuck he was saying. The reality is, you will make more money working at McDonald's. You will have less stress. You will have a better career progression path. And you'll ultimately be happier working at McDonald's than in game dev. Promise you. It'll be much, much easier to get a job, to keep that job, and to go up the ladder in that job. I hate to say it, but you don't get into game dev right now because it pays a lot. Now I worked there, it sucked. I don't know, man. You work in game dev or something. Pretty shitty too. You can get replaced any day. Or just laid off. Just, yep. Oh no, you made a successful game that people loved. Yeah, we're gonna fire you anyway. Bye-bye. Sort of, but I do want to give some perspective that there's still more opportunity in game dev compared to other passion industries like writing art. This is true, but if you're passionate, you will put up with the bullshit. It's just, you have to land. It's like, you know, it's Tim, I'm gonna draw on your face. It's the great face. I'm sorry, but I need to draw something. You know, you have this many people falling from game dev, right? All these people, millions and millions of people want to get into game dev. Here are the platforms of companies where you will actually make a good living, have a stable job, and your passion will be utilized. And if you can't see those three red dots, that's also kind of the point. And somehow, all these people need to funnel themselves onto it. Most of these will quit here. And you'll have a fair bit left. That's the 1 year, by the way. This is the 5 year. $10 years. That's what's left, at best. Now, the thing is, if you can make it past 10 years, like I have over 10 years, you have a little bit of safety because at that point, you're probably a senior level, and there are like 10,000 senior jobs for every one junior job in this industry. Getting past this is fucking impossible. It was nearly impossible when I got into the industry. It's even worse now, and I don't feel good for any junior trying to break into the industry right now. But your passion, your love for game dev is going to get eaten and chewed up here. And if you can manage to hold on to it by 5 years, you'll be kind of okay, but you're still gonna have to deal with some bullshit. And if you can manage to hang on to it here, yeah, you're kind of in the clear. But getting past those 10 years means you will make very little money, have a lot of stress, probably have to move multiple times for your job. It's not good. Can I be a dot? Yes. Sorry, I didn't see you guys while I was drawing. Still going, yeah. This is our last video for today. You can make a career in social media about game dev, hack right there. Yeah, you can. Unfortunately, a lot of the people making careers on social media about like talking about game dev have never actually worked on like a game. I don't know. I'm at 10 years. I'm when. I don't know. Do you feel if you agree with me? If you're in like a senior role or you have 10 years in the industry, do you also feel like if you had to apply for some other place, you could probably get some interviews? But then you look at junior positions in the industry and there are like none. And then you see the number of applicants for junior jobs and it's thousands upon thousands. Even on like in Poland here, we have a website called Skillshot. And if you look for like junior level jobs, like 2,000 views on this, but then you look at like, I don't know, senior lead job and it's just nothing, because you know people will filter themselves out at that point and saying, oh yeah, I'm definitely not senior lead level. You're just competing with far fewer people at the senior lead position. If you're going to make a video game, do a retro console or indie, do it alone or come up with a small dream team. Yeah, I mean, your ROI is comparative to your initial investment, right? If your initial investment of a game is $1,000 and you make 10,000, well, that's a 1,000 percentage gain, right? If your initial investment is 100 million and you make 200 million, you've made only 2 times what you invested into it. So, yeah, at a certain point, like you can scope down your game to a niche audience and appeal to that, and like just churn out games for that audience and build up a bit of brand recognition in that niche, and you can live really happily and stably there. 1,000%, I agree with that. My career field is kind of similar. A lot of people get their certifications, spend tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands on certifications, but then never find a job. Those who do get paid like $18 to $20 an hour for their first 3 to 5 years after spending 150K on their certs before moving on to a job that pays a livable wage. And while they're making 18 to 20 an hour, a lot of them either burn out or get pushed out. Yeah, there's a lot of burnout in game dev. Sounds very similar. The term starving artist is a thing for a reason. Is this true?
And I'm going to
Very competitive.
probably oversimplify it down to two things,
Okay.
which I'll call the two S's: self-confidence and situation. That's what you need to take risks. Self-confidence is pretty straightforward. You need to be sure about your ideas, not just for your own sake, but for anybody you're working with. They have to have some confidence that this is the right thing to do.
You can drag yourself to the pits of hell, but the moment that you hire somebody else, that they become, a legal employee, you are now responsible for their paycheck, right? And if you, it's like having a kid in some cases, right? Where, okay, you can be kind of crazy, you can be kind of wild, have a drunk night or whatever. You have a kid. No, none of that. Now you need to make sure that that kid has everything that's looked after. Maybe once you put them to bed, you can have like an hour to relax by yourself, but you'll probably fall asleep around that time too. It's different levels of responsibility. I can take the leaps and bounds with Microraptor Games because I don't have any employees. I can take these risks, and I have the situation to kind of afford doing it because our my finances are kind of stable, a little bit negative, but stable-ish. But a lot of people don't have that luxury. They want to take that risk. They have the self-confidence to do it, but they aren't in the financial situation for it, or they have the financial situation for it and they just don't have the confidence. They don't even try because it's like, well, it's a lot of work and I don't want to, it would be stressful not to have my job. It's like, yes. So do you actually want it? Well, kinda. If you actually want it, then take it, then do it, try it. Otherwise, work your stable job, be stable, be happy. That's important too. You'll have a family, you'll have, a lot less stress. You can't play both of these roads. Taking care of employees is just a business thing you will have to respect and understand accordingly. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of responsibility having an employee. And I think people kind of just jump into it and don't really understand that it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to have somebody else who's relying on you for their tasks, for their job, for their growth. And if they feel like they aren't growing or they aren't being challenged, or they aren't being paid properly for the amount of responsibilities they have, there's only so much. What's the word? Like inspiration you can do to keep them churning that wheel. But you can't motivate an employee. You can inspire them, but you can't motivate them.
You also, though, have to be able to resist attacks, and I'm using that word correctly, from publishers, from other developers, from
Friends
game
and family,
players
yeah.
and game fans who will attempt to tear down your idea.
Yes.
Sometimes objectively, hey, your idea is not going to work well, and here's why. Sometimes subjectively, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard of. Why are you coming up with dumb ideas? You're dumb. So that's the self-confidence side you need.
Well, and I don't even think that should be glanced over. It can take a lot out of you when you are so confident that your idea is fun. But every designer knows in this industry that paper design is not equivalent to practical design. You cannot design the perfect game on paper and then it just magically turns into the best designed game in history once you actually start prototyping and developing it. You can even have the greatest design on paper. You have too little time to implement it properly, so you have to cut some things down, and now it's all ruined, right? So No, it's you. Yeah, you have to defend against that, and if you're making something that nobody's ever seen before, people will be wary of that idea because they haven't seen it. It isn't familiar to them. If you don't get an empty feeling in your gut when you think about not being able to make games, or you don't feel like you should be at your PC every moment, feel guilty for not working on your game, you're not ready for this level of passion. I get physically depressed if I am not working on a game. I have to actually work on a game. It doesn't mean I have to burn myself out of it, but if I spend too long on stream playing games instead of working on them, I will get depressed. But at the same time, if I spend too much time working on my games, I can get burned out, and so therefore I have to play a game. And it's a vicious cycle of trying to balance, avoiding burnout, but also working on my game enough. It's yeah, being passionate game dev is tough. It's a happy medium, but it's really hard to meet. 90% of ideas on paper fall apart in practice. I mean, this is ultimately, I don't know who said it, but I agree with anybody in chat who's been saying the best advice for game dev is to just load up the engine and do things. And Game Over Goblin, by the way, he's a YouTuber and a reactor, and he's been jumping into Unreal himself. And rather than spend, I don't know, 10 years working on perfecting the design, he's just jumped into the engine. And correct me if I'm wrong, Game Over Goblin, but you've probably learned more in those few months of jumping into Unreal Engine than you ever would have if you had just watched, some tutorials or thought a bit more about your game. That's really kind of what it needs, is just go in, accept the fact that you might fail, go fail. We spent 2 days last week learning state trees in Unreal. I learned a lot. I made no progress. I failed, and I learned a lot from that. So now I know more about what to avoid and how to do it wrong. That's good. And playing games much less, more focused on making, like 90% dev, 10% gaming. I think playing games is still important. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna play games. I'm gonna go do my daily missions um on Killing Floor 3. I'm probably gonna load up some other game and play that for a little bit too if I have the time. I just do that because I love games and I love staying on top of all of it, right? Go fail, yeah, go fail. It's okay to fail. I think that was one of the biggest problems for me. I even, as cringe as it sounds, I was at a point in my life where I had a desktop, like my desktop on Windows, and I made it myself, and it just said, "Don't fear failure." And I know it sounds cringy, because it kind of is, but I was so afraid of it that it would just paralyze me. And really, what I needed was to just jump in and do it and figure it out. And it was hard, and I failed a lot, and I still fail a lot, but it got me over that hump. So I did it. I decided I wanted Unreal 8 years ago. I knew nothing about Unreal. Now I have 3 games. They're not great, but hey, I did it. 3 games more than most people have. Then a mix, but I went in just knowing it's gonna suck, but I'm having fun and I love the engine. And I think that's the best way to do it. Feeling helps more than not feeling. Yeah. Dig a hole. Dig your grave, okay? Dig a hole, jump into it, and be like, you know what? Kind of shitty being in this hole. I'm gonna go climb out of it and dig another hole. And eventually you'll find like a hole that's like, you know what? I like this hole. I'm gonna make this hole mine. I'm gonna fill myself into this hole as much as I can and make this hole my life. I like this hole. Clip that out of context. This year I said I will release a game and see if I can get at least 20 folks playing it, then shoot for 50. Little wins will help you more with the burnout. This is true too. Yeah, just seeing people happy with their game, like smiling, playing your game. Same thing. Like I said before the age of 30, I want to have my own game on Steam and or my own studio. I would argue that I don't really have my own studio right now just because we don't have any, cash flow, right? But I will at least have my own game a year later before I'm 31. But I did it. I'm pulling you in with me, right? You just got to do it. Like the analogy with the people falling and they get filtered out after certain years. We talked about it yesterday, or I'm sorry, Friday. No, wait, someday. Today. Wait, was it today? I don't know. I talked about it. I said most people who want to make games will never actually engage in game dev. Most of the people that engage in game dev will not make it past like learning the basics of the engine or getting stuck in tutorial hell. Most of those people who make it past that will never be able to make a couple of systems that work in tandem with each other. Most of the people that get through that will never work on a full game. It's just the amount of knowledge and failure and frustration and brick walls that you have to hit to get down to even that point is so many that I think anybody who's in chat that says who here in chat is a game dev, number one, and keep your hand raised or shout out if at least one time a year you think maybe like you just get so frustrated that you're like maybe I should just do something else. But you always come back to game dev, right? You never actually quit, but you just have the like, is this worth it? Just one time, right? Uh, assembly, gamer first, game dev second. I quit game dev 10, 15 times a year, right? Yeah, it's tough. Fucking tough. Thank you, Kenji's. That clip's gonna age well. Games like Phasmo or Schedule 1 give me hope for us. It's not always about how the game looks. True. I think I should do something else, but about all things, including making games, but then I just keep on trucking. That's the way to do it. Like, really, if any progress you make on your game is more progress than if you don't make progress on your game. Even if it's just a bug fix. Like, if you load up the engine, fix a bug, turn it off. If that's the most that you can force yourself to do in a day, do it. And it's like, just breaking it down into sizable goals. I know if I mention Jordan Peterson, I'm going to have like a whole bunch of controversy, but just know, put aside political Jordan Peterson and let's look at one of the books he wrote. And he talks in one of the, it was about 10 rules for life, or 12 rules for life, whatever. And one of the rules was about managing crises and breaking life down into smaller and smaller pieces until you can digest those pieces. If you cannot handle a day in your life, then don't worry about handling a day, worry about handling an hour. And if you can't handle an hour in your life, worry about the next minute. Stare at the clock for 60 seconds and just be like, yes, I made it, okay. Do one more minute. Just break it down, and you have to break down those goals in game dev too. If you think, I'm going to jump into game dev and I'm going to make a platformer, you need a lot of stuff to make a platformer. Even if you use like assets or whatever, even if you're jumping into the engine, after a couple years of knowing it, making your own game requires that you know the full cycle of game development, every single aspect of it, including how to release it, how to package it, how to localize for it, how to do gamepad support. You need to learn all this. You need to get over a whole bunch of brick walls and humps. And so just break it down into little manageable sections, smaller and smaller until you can actually do it. And if your limit is, okay, I want a button in Unreal that when I step on it, a door disappears. I can, walk through an area. Fine, that's okay. Do that. And practice that. Understand what's actually going on, the communication of the blueprint nodes or something if you're working in blueprints. And then just say, okay, I want one now where there's 3 buttons and I can control in the editor which is the one that's going to open the door, right? I can have like a little boolean that B does open door, true, and the other 2 are false. Okay, and then, scale that up and start to just take risks, start to challenge yourself little bit by little bit. There is an optimal state, right, where I'm sorry, Tim, I'm going to draw on your face again. I'm really sorry, but you'll like this one. There's an optimal state here where if something is too challenging, you're going to hit the brick wall and you won't know what to do. And if something is too easy, you get bored AF. LOL. Okay? This is the optimal place you want to be in. It's right here in the middle, your flow state, where something is just challenging enough that you kind of know how you would attempt it, but you've never done it before, or you haven't done it enough to be skillful with it. And if you jump into games and you say, I'm going to make, MMORPG with 10,000 players and 1 million server shards, and it's going to be 1-to-1 scale of the world, yeah, it's not going to happen. The reason why it doesn't exist, even with companies that have billions of dollars like Rockstar, is because it's fucking impossible to make. and people might not even want it. Just jump in with what you know, with what you can do, and build on top of that. I'm sorry, Tim. I got really distracted. Sorry about that, chat. Game dev should be a hobby, is what you're saying. If you make a hit, celebrate. Yeah, I mean, look at Balatro. Balatro, the guy who made Balatro, just made the game for his 3 friends. He wasn't expecting anybody else to play it. Now he's sitting with like, $100 million. So who came out in the end of that, right? Want to do it, but that is the more performant and correct way to do it. When do we ever do things right? Yeah, templates are great. Yeah, templates are great. Just jump in. You don't. It's okay if you use somebody else's code to give yourself a leg up. Just know that that isn't something you made, and you may not know how to bug fix it, or to analyze it, or to build on top of it because you didn't make it, right? And you don't understand how it works. I bought Fluid Flux. I don't know how Fluid Flux works. Not an artist. So when I have bugs with it, I didn't really know how to fix them very well, or some of them I didn't even end up fixing ever. And that's really what the sacrifice is.
Now let's talk about the situation side.
Tim.
This is where things get complicated, and I don't think people look into this as much. If you're going to take risks in game development, you have to be able to take that risk. Which means accepting the failure. Which means if your idea doesn't pan out, are you okay with not making a game or making a game that sells really badly? And I'm not just talking about monetarily, I'm talking about the time you spent and the other things you could have done, because doing one thing means you didn't do another. A lot of people...
The vast majority of games will never make back the money that it costs to make them. And that doesn't just go for indie, that goes for every size of studio. And I hate seeing the stories of the indie developers who build a game for 10 years and the game, doesn't sell that much. And, maybe the trend was popular when you had started working on the game, but you took 10 years to make it and it isn't popular anymore. Maybe you didn't do market analysis. Maybe you made the game that you're passionate about. And so when it fails, you're upset that other people weren't passionate about it and didn't buy it. Yeah, it sucks, but it's like if you want to be financially successful in the game dev industry, you need to make a game that is marketable, and you need to understand that market. It's like Golden Chronicles. I was making an open world RPG. It's a very big market, and I was aiming at a niche of people who wanted more old school experiences and story driven, systemic experiences as opposed to a bunch of stat and perk playing games, right? And I knew that market. I knew the games in that market. I've played a lot of them. I understood the market. I did the analysis, and the numbers look accurate. But ultimately, it was still too risky for publishers to fund, mainly because we were an unheard of studio. We didn't have existing games out there. We didn't have an existing team. They're always going to find a reason not to give you money, and that's the risk that I took the risk, but that doesn't mean that the publishers are going to take the risk. I think the games that make the most are live service, which are mainly exclusive to AAA. Yeah, there's a lot of that. DMM, thank you so much for the raid with 63 people. Hi, guys.
Dmulroy raided my stream with 63 viewers.
Hi, guys. We're watching some Tim Cain and talking about taking risks in game dev and what a comment to raid into. Yeah, we get pretty crazy in this chat. Thank you so much for the raid. I hope you guys are having a good Monday and doing well. We're nearing the end of the stream, so I'll try to move you guys somewhere else at the end of it. But I really appreciate it. Why do we hear Russian? There shouldn't be any Russian. I'm in Poland. You're not going to hear a lot of Russian here. Timing was impeccable. Thank you so much. I hope you're having a good day, and thank you again for the raid. Welcome, guys. You can chill. We're talking about like just how to break into the industry, and we're not sugarcoating it. I think that a lot of people who want to break into game dev or they try to teach juniors and people wanting to get into it, and they say, well, you can do it, you can make it, but man, it's tough. It's tough, and it's very difficult to break out of that initial shell of not knowing how to work with a game engine or not having any connections. Being able to follow tutorials but not anything else. fail every week, but I'm still here. That really is what makes the difference. I mean, even with YouTube, I think is kind of similar, where it's just consistency, focus on your niche, focus on what you're good at, continue to get better at it, be humble, constantly try to improve it. I mean, with Twitch, it's the same. It's just consistency, right? If you want to build up an audience on Twitch, people need to know to predict that you're going to be live on Twitch. They need to say, well, this person streams from this time to this time on these days. That's when he's going to be live. He has a schedule, he sticks to it, and that's why there's that support. And it's the same with game dev. If you want to make it in game dev, you just need to take a bite out of it. Say, look, I don't know what I'm doing. Why don't I try doing this? Oh, this was too hard. I failed. The day ended in absolutely no progress. But it did. It ended up with you knowing what not to do. And eventually, once you learn all the things not to do, you'll start doing some things right. And then you analyze, why did I do that right? Why does this work? Oh, it's because of this and this and this. Let's emulate that. Let's build up that momentum. Connecting two systems to each other for the first time, making a puzzle that works is a lot more difficult than it sounds, because you have all these different things communicating with each other. How can we compete with these big game dev? Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say. Big game dev companies. Well, the good news is they're shooting themselves in the foot, so you kind of just have to exist as an indie dev. They're doing it to themselves by not taking risks and spending way too much money on games that don't need that much of a budget. And that's not to say that games with big budgets are all bad, but that in a lot of cases, the budgets that these games are taking are unsustainable for the modern market, which is more segmented. It's a lot more diverse in the genres and experiences that people want. And I think that's a good thing. But they are they're shooting themselves in the foot. They're kind of just doing it to themselves. Yeah, make 5v5 hero shooter, and they're like, hey, why did this $300 million game fail? I wonder why. Maybe if they just made a quality single player product. The problem is that every analyst in the industry, they don't know anything. They're a bunch of mongs, if you ask me. They just say, oh, well, single player games aren't selling. Turn-based strategy games aren't selling. And they're wrong every time. Every single time. If a game is good, people will play it. If it's a genre they don't usually engage in, they will try the genre. Expedition 33, turn-based game. Baldur's Gate 3, turn-based strategy. These were both games that if you asked publishers nowadays, if you pitch these games, they would say, too risky, not going to do it. People aren't into fantasy anymore. It's all about sci-fi. Or people don't want a turn-based strategy game anymore because it's too niche to, Final Fantasy lovers or whatever. Yeah. Don't follow a trend. Don't look at the genres that are selling. Make a game, make it good, make it fun. People will come to that. That is your number one goal. If a game is fun, you can find a way to market it. The thing is that $10 million didn't go into that game. It was spent so they can write it off on taxes. That's also pretty true. I mean, $10 million isn't even that much money, but you could have 3 AA companies, or even 2 if you really want to give them some leeway, working on games for $10 million versus a AAA company that would spend that much money in 2 months. 8 bits out. Thank you for the follow as well. Or 8 bits out. Sorry, it's probably the way you say it. Just the market is flooded with good games. I don't know if it's worth starting. I mean, that's another thing. I wouldn't even say you're wrong. There's so many games coming out on Steam that it's hard to make a dent. I'd say that if you're trying to break into the industry by making a viral hit, you will never succeed. Don't do it. There's never a case, and I would challenge people to name one, where somebody set out to make a viral hit and they succeeded in it. Almost all the viral hits in recent memory have been people that were like, I just made this game because it was kind of fun and I thought maybe my friends would play it, and that's it. And then it blew up and sold, 10 million copies. But you bring up a good point. There are a lot of good games coming out, but having visibility is very different, and just because you make a good game doesn't mean that you'll have the visibility for it. There's plenty of great games that review well that don't ever get the attention that they probably deserve. It's tough. There's no perfect. Yeah, you're lucky if you get viral, and there's no perfect solution to success. And anybody who tries to tell you this is the way that you succeed in the game dev industry, they're liars. And like Tim, I think would agree, they're trying to sell you something. They're snake oil salesmen. There's no formula for success. There's no methodology that if you follow it to the T, you're going to succeed, or you're going to fail if you do all these things. It's way easier to fail than it is to succeed, and there are methodologies that you can follow, but ultimately it's going to come down to sometimes the right place at the right time. Power World really wasn't anything special as a game, but it happened to hit at the right place at the right time in a market that Nintendo hadn't capitalized on, which is the PC Steam market, right? It was those factors that led to its success, even though in some cases Power World is a bit of a shallow game and a bit of a shallow experience. But they made their money, and now they're going to improve the game, and that's great for them. That's kind of the point. But you can't bank on that happening. I feel like if everybody had the mentality to never try for failure, we would be drowned in AAA garbage. Any game dev is not about money. Even if you hit it big, you gotta live on that money and get to the next big hit. Thing is, you love this, then it's worth it, but that's the only reason. Passion before success, because you always have your passion with you, but have bills to pay. Yeah, it's just, if you are gonna get into game dev, you have to make a game marketable. It's as simple as that. If you want to make money in this industry, you have to make your games marketable. You can build your passion project, sure, but there's no guarantee that your passion project is actually going to fill a niche large enough that there's those potential sales. If you make a game that is, I don't know, like some indie game that 1,000 people bought, and you want to target that market, understand that if you sell your game at $5, or let's say $3, after Steam's cut, you have $2, and your 1,000 copies that you might sell to those people is going to be $2,000. How much, of your energy do you want to spend on what's likely going to be $2,000 to $5,000 at best? If it's multiple years, maybe not worth it. But it's up to you. It's up to you. If you're doing it for passion, you've accepted it is what it is. I don't care about the number of sales. I just want to do it because this is the game that I love and want to make. Go for it.
People simply aren't in a situation to take risk like that. Maybe they're using someone else's money to do development, and that person doesn't want the risk taken. Maybe they're responsible for other people's employment. I've talked about how when I had to shut down Troika, there was this immense feeling of guilt that there were all these people who were dependent on Troika for employment, and I was closing it down, which is one reason I didn't want to run a company again.
It's one of the reasons I'm scared to run a company, because I know that if it was one of the reasons why I didn't push Golden Chronicles further, because what publishers were saying was true. There's no guarantee that if they gave me the money that I could find the 30 people that we need to make the game. And if I can't make the game, and there is a significant risk on my back to make that game the way that it was intended to be made, then I'd be letting down the people that I hired. I could take that risk. I could take a business loan and start to fund the development of the game, but it's a big risk, and maybe it's not necessary when I could build up the company a bit more slowly, then pull that game out of the back burner and that prototype and our GDD that we made, and build it from a more solid foundation where I'm not risking just my time and money, but also the time and stability of the people that I hire who also want to have families or have families and want stability and are looking at me to build up that ethical studio. Is it ethical for me to take such a big risk and to force that instability on the team and that stress on the team just so that my passion project can be made? No, not with that amount of risk. So that, it's a tough thing. I had to kill my baby to a certain extent, and it's possible we might never pull it out in the future. I would like to, but it's just possible that we might not. And that has to be done for my sake and for the sake of the people that ultimately would like to rely on me and work with me.
Or if you're soloing, maybe you can't solo because you need to have a steady income. You need insurance. Mm-hmm. It could be for your own personal situation. You need it for rent. You need it for food. Maybe it's family. Maybe you have kids. Maybe you're taking care of an elderly parent. and you have to have income or you have to have insurance.
And that's one of the things that I think is, if you're trying to get into the game dev industry, you need to accept that this is a possibility. There is a very high likelihood that you will not ever be stable enough financially or geographically to actually have a family. If you're okay with that, fine. But just know it's that competitive of an industry that is on the table. Unless, both you and your partner are like breadwinners, or I don't know, it's going to take that much effort and time, and you might even have to sacrifice payment or a steady income in order to continue this career. Because I do agree with you, IGS Ghost. It's a very passion driven industry if you want to make it super far, or you have to sell your soul and your ethics. And if you don't want to do that, then you're gonna have to go through the process. I have to make my game all day with bills to pay and a family to feed, and they want to eat like 3 times a day every single day. Selfish. What, you mean they can't eat exposure? No, but it's tough. Yeah, if you have kids, if you have a family, it's just, at the end of the day, you need to do what's best for them, because that's what a responsible, loving, caring parent does. And that is way more of a sacrifice than anything that I do on this channel or with my company. If anything, I'm being selfish.
Whatever it is, you just may not be in a situation to be able to take risks. And I think anybody who's done solo development already knows those two S's very well. And I've never done solo development, but I've made a lot of stuff on my own. Early in my career, when I'd come home from Interplay on nights and weekends, I was making all kinds of stuff. That's where
solo dev is a pipe dream. I'm going to say it. If you want to be a solo dev, you're operating in such a challenging field with a much higher likelihood of failure and lack of financial stability than if you even took one additional person on your team. I think solo development is overrated. It's nearly impossible to succeed like that, and I don't think you need the ego boost. I think it's more important just to make games and have fun and learn things. Depends how much you need to pay the bill. In a global market, is it hard to get $800 per month from game dev? Yeah. It is. It's really hard. Life has a good job and we are comfortable, but yeah, this is not for everyone. I'm also lucky my life loves development as well. I have a very caring wife as well, and she currently is winning the bread, but we've kind of gone back and forth on that, right? It's not about who's the winner, who's the loser. It's about, can we just find a way to succeed together, not go into debt, and not fight over finances. And if we can do that, tiring and lonely solo dev. No, I think, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to shit on solo devs. I just think that if you're trying to make a game as a hobby and you know that you're going into it because you just want to learn, that's different. But if you're trying to say, I want to be game dev to financially succeed, and I'm doing it for that sort of like glory, don't do that. I don't recommend it. I really don't. If you're really good at design or programming, find an artist. If you're a good artist, find a programmer. Just do that. And I know it's hard to do, but like go find a game jam, go to some game dev stuff. Just say, hey, anyone 3D artist? You do? Let's make a game. Let's just make something. Let's make a scene. I'm good at everything. I wish that's how it was. That's the best kind of wife for a dev, the kind that just says, let's survive and not starve, yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. That's the best way to put it. You're right.
Some of the early engines came from. That's where my operating system abstraction libraries came from. It was all personal code that ended up folding into a game at work, and then it became Interplay's code, and now I don't have it anymore. But
RIP.
I want to talk about why could I take risks early in my career? Why was that something that I could do? Well, first of all, I got very lucky early on with people who just believed in me. The first game company I worked at, Pegasus, which became Cybron, and we made Grand Slam Bridge, they liked a tool I made for them, an art tool for the Atari, and which I did as a contractor. I made it for the Atari 800, and then they hired me. So that was...
I don't think this can be underestimated. I think that people who are looking to get into game dev are underestimating how important luck and having somebody who believes in you is. Because again, you have to be the one chosen out of potentially thousands of candidates. thousands. You have to be the one that sticks out. Just having a degree, by the way, degrees mean nothing in game dev. I guarantee you. I'm not trying to say that if you are currently going for a game dev degree that it's bad. It's going to help, but just know that most places look, oh, degree, okay, what have you worked on? Okay, this, you did a game jam, okay, can I find a playable demo of it? Here's the work you did on this. Okay, that's pretty good. They'll skip right past it because it doesn't mean anything. And you need to find that person that believes in you. You need to find that person who can be your knight in shining armor and say, you know what? Let's try you. And that's how I got into the industry. That's how I even got some of my other jobs, even after I had already proven myself. You need to find the person that believes in you. Yeah, experience means so much more. I suck at it all, but I'm learning to suck a little less. You'll find the thing that you really like to do, and I know you're doing it for like a hobby, but you'll find the thing that you really, really enjoy. That's the thing that you should spend your time in, because if you're being hired for a company, even if it's a small team, by the way, they're hiring you as a specialist. They're not, you don't see job advertisements in game dev as generalist Unity developer. And also we need you to design and also do UI, UX mockups, whatever. They hire you for a specialized job. They'll be happy if you can wear a few extra hats or know what you're talking about in a couple of other fields, especially as a game designer. That's kind of necessary. But, you know, focus on the thing that you're good at and you like, and then expand your knowledge in the ways that you need it. But if you just try to be generalist, you're not going to find a job at most places, because they can find somebody, they want a programmer, they can find a better programmer than you, they want a designer, they can find a better designer than you. Yeah, make a portfolio. Be happy with the stuff that you failed at too. If you made a, I don't know, a cringe little dozer game back in 2017, yeah, be happy about it. You have a game. It's not a great game. It's nothing special, but guess what? It plays. You packaged it. It runs. You don't have bugs. It is what it is. And then eventually, you might find it, you know, able in your career to dive back into that idea during maybe a little self-hosted game jam or something, and push that idea further. And I need to fix my my options menu. And then you can dive back into that idea and make something similar and deeper and bigger. And that shows, that progress is what shows, by the way, when at least when I've reviewed portfolios, when I've reviewed CVs, I like to see progress. I don't care if your early games were shit. I want to see the progress that you made and how you went from point A to B and where you didn't give up, even though everything was telling you to give up. I want to see those brick walls, how you push past them, where you push past them. You did a game jam, you failed to make a proper game. What did you learn from it? Okay, we overscoped our game. So, did you do another game jam where you scoped properly? Yes, you did. Awesome. You learned your lesson. You've experienced that problem. That looks good to me. Right, like I'm a good programmer and I enjoy it a lot, but I hate UI design and animations, and you fucking hire somebody to do that. AAA shooters at the side of the genius of the Dozer game. God, I hope not. Got two of those. They're not good games, but they are my games. Exactly. Or God forbid, it's like a text RPG written in batch script. Okay? Is this anything special? No. Did I learn a lot from it? Yes. You know, you just make progress one thing at a time. And I'm happy about those. I share those. I show those off on streams. I show those off on my CV because I'm proud of the fact that I went from something so simple to something a little bit more complex to a little bit more complex. And in about 1 month, I will release a game of my own creation along with an artist, because I can't do that for shit. And we can release that game as our company. That's progress. Progress. But it took me a long time to have that attitude. Don't think that I adopted that attitude from day one. Like I said on last video, when I was a kid and I had quit high school and I thought that it was going to be impossible to make it in game dev without an education, I made a background for myself on my PC that says, don't fear failure. And that helped me get through the days. Okay? It's cringy, but it worked.
was really cool. At Interplay, I worked on several projects, but then I got
Pile of shit in that
put in
product,
charge of my
exactly.
own project. But
I
let me
took
tell
that
you,
shit.
I already had 2 programming degrees, a bachelor's and a master's.
You're so much
I
smarter than
had
me.
played a ton of games, not just video games, but board games and tabletop role-playing games. And I had been in the game business for over a decade. In fact, I'd been in the game industry for 13 years before I got put in charge of Fallout.
If you want, and this is important, if you want to work at places that encourage passion, you need to display your passion. One of the things that I ask for people who want to work with me is, like on CVs that I've reviewed, is send me a cover letter. I do read it, and I want you to explain how you got into this industry and how much it means to you. Because if I'm going to hire somebody who's passionate, somebody who I know is going to go above and beyond to learn, to get better, and grow, I need to see that passion on paper. And if it's just, oh, here's my CV, here's where I worked, no cover letter, please hire me. I'm like, why would I hire you over this person who might have a little bit less experience? But they've shown me all these really awesome things that they've done and told me how much gaming meant to them when they were young. And, you know, they played games with their dad and those memories meant a lot to them. And they just want to recreate those memories in the new generation of kids that they had when they grew up. Oh, I'll choose that guy any day of the week. I'm choosing that guy. Any day. My wife was my background. She tells me when I want to quit, if you can go a week and not open the engine, I will believe you and support you quitting. Obviously, because I have a degree.
Fallout happened in 94. I started in the industry in 81. So it took 13 years before I got a project that I was in charge of. And at that point, I was pretty confident. I had an academic basis, I had an experiential basis in both gaming and the game development industry. So I was ready to do a product and my own project, and that was Fallout, and it worked. So now we've established, if you believe me now about the self-confidence and the situation being 2 most important things, let me talk about why that doesn't always happen now. First of all, the people with the money, when we're talking money, we're not talking a few $100,000 or maybe $1 million. We're talking tens or hundreds of millions of dollars.
And I just want to emphasize, hiring people here in Poland is about 2 to 3 times cheaper than in the West. This was the budget for our game Cauldron Chronicles in euros. This was a 3-year development span, which is a pretty normal amount of time. You could even argue it's maybe a little bit too little of time for an open world RPG, but we had planned to release in early access and extend that if needed. This was about 30 people that was needed over the course of development, and this ends up being about 4 million euros. Games are expensive, and most of it is personnel. You know, it's like 3 million of that. Most of it, 75% of that, was just people. That's what they cost. And even if you want to include outsourcing, which is more people, is another big chunk of that. That's another 435,000 euros for outsourcing for certain things that we thought we would need, but didn't have, full-time expenditures needed for that. This is the correct way to budget, but it's just, you think that, 4 million euros is a lot for games? That's very little. A game like this, if we were, hiring Western people, would be over $10 million. I'll do the voice acting for free, saved you a few pennies. You would have liked it, Game Over Goblin. I had a goblin, a sewer goblin, who just talked about poops and shites all day. His name was Spoon. He was lovable, he was beautiful, he was everything that embodied my personality, and really, he deserves a life. Which is why we're making another game with him as the main character.
And the people who want to put that into a game don't necessarily want to take a huge risk.
Nope.
It's just, if you fail, the consequences of failure are huge. So that's why there's a lot of caution.
The bigger the risk financially, the less risk they're going to take with the game. And it's why games are so safe. If your game is $200 billion to budget, that game needs to make like if it's like 200 million, you need to make like 500 million, 600 million to actually be considered a financial success, because your investors are investing. They expect their investments to grow, not to remain the same. If they've spent $10 million on you and 5 years later it's still $10 million, they're not going to be happy. They're going to take their money out into another studio. So you need to make a profit. So it's not just like the game budget is risky, but the the return on investment is so high that you can't take the risks. And what do you end up with? Well, I'll show you what you end up with if you have a game like that. You have this game. This is your game with no risks. And I will say this game looked beautiful, it ran buttery smooth, and it had nothing to say and was so forgettable. It was bland, it was boring, and the only thing that I can say is that the artist and the tech artist did a fantastic job. Avowed, here's the thing. Okay, I have a full playthrough of me doing Dragon Age Veilguard, 100% on our YouTube. I did a 100% playthrough of Avowed. I actually I think Avowed was better. There were some things I had problems with Avowed, but I think Avowed was a better game. And it had things to say, and I think that the stories in them were mostly pretty decent. But it's a $70 game, right? You know, the game was boring. Which one? Or is the answer yes? I didn't hate Avowed, but yeah, it was like a 7 out of 10 game for me. Dragon Age Veilguard was just like a 4 out of 10. Both, well, exactly. I think it was better as well. Still feel too safe. I expected more. I think that's fair. But when it comes to, when I'm thinking of like the character writing, to me, like they're both open world RPGs, right? And to me, the two things that matter the most to an open world RPG are three: story, dialogue, characters. That's what I want. I do not care if your game looks like poo or is way less budget friendly, or is more budget friendly than Avowed, which cost probably $50 million to make. Let's think of a game like Solasta. This game was better for me. And yes, it may not be as visually as impressive as other games in the genre, but it was fun and it was good, and I liked the story that it told. Now, Veilguard wasn't that open, but you get what I mean. Like, they're both games that I think those three pillars are characters, story, and dialogue. And Avowed did those better than Veilguard. Veilguard was just absolutely bland in every aspect of that. You forget the fourth pillar.
Personally, I'm not in a position to risk as much anymore as when I was younger. When I was younger, I didn't have a mortgage. My health was fine. You don't realize that when you're in your 20s that your health is like flawless, and you don't have any debts, and you're not. I wasn't married. I didn't have anything to worry about in that regard. That's not the case anymore. So there's that. But also, that's all situational stuff. Let's take a look at the confidence stuff. You'd think my confidence would get higher and higher. But
no, it
just
doesn't.
take a look at the 2 years I've been making videos here. There's almost...
I promise you, the further you get in game dev, the less confident you become. And that's a good thing. That's your ego getting punched into the gut and stabbed like it was on the streets of Manchester, okay? That's a good thing in this case. The one time we're getting stabbed in Manchester City is okay. Is when your ego is getting stabbed. But the further I get into game dev, the less confident I become, because the more that I see of the complexities of every aspect, not just of game development, but of business development, of managing the business, of staying operational. It's absolute hell.
600 videos, and don't misunderstand me, most of the comments are overwhelmingly positive, but there's still negative ones in there, and in sheer number, there's a lot of negative ones. And it sometimes makes other people in the industry ask me, why are you doing this? Why do you open yourself up for attack like this? And I do have a video called Why Other People Don't Make Channels Like This. And this...
If you're afraid of conflict, you'll never get anywhere in life. It's simple as that. And that can go conflict in yourself, with like you're confronting your own vulnerabilities or weaknesses, conflict with other people, conflict with the environment. If you cannot approach conflict and face it head on, you won't get far in life, and I promise you, you will not get far in game dev if you're afraid of conflict.
But I usually tell them this video is nothing compared to 44 years in the game industry, where I've heard personal insults and snide comments and sarcasm, demoralizing feedback, degrading feedback from publishers, from other game developers, from bosses, from people working for me, from players, from supposed fans. So I've been through all that and I get it. But at some point you go, you know what? Enough is enough. I've done this for years. Maybe it's time for someone else to take risks. Maybe it's time to not only like pass this on to someone else and go, okay, I did this when I was young. It's your turn. And this.
So, you want to see the meat grinder, kid? Here you go, and chuck him in the meat grinder. It's true though, yeah. I'm not saying I don't want to defend any of the negative actions, right? I don't want to defend the studios that treat people like shit or are toxic, have horrible hierarchies, toxic positivity problems. I never want to defend that. In fact, that's the reason why I started my own company, was to push back against all of those problems. But you do have to be prepared for it. Neros, thank you for the follow. Thank you, sir, ma'am, individual. Hurry. Not in my town, you don't.
Kind of leads me into the final thing, which is, how about you? Why don't you take some risks? Instead of complaining
Tim,
about games that are coming out and complaining about what other people have done, why don't you do something?
Tim! I'm trying. Timmy. Daddy Tim, don't. He doesn't mean me, right?
Because if you're right, if you have all these great ideas and you're right, you're going to make a great game and everyone wins. And I'm sure right now you're thinking about that self-confidence stuff. Some of you. Some of you I don't think have the self-reflection to understand that you're not confident. But you may be thinking, I don't have the right situation.
That's true. That's true. I think that, I don't know, that was such a small little jab, but it's true. And I think that there are a lot of people also that just lack the introspection enough to figure out how something went wrong or why they might be a net loss to a studio or to the I don't know. Introspection is so important in game dev that if you don't have it, much like being afraid of conflict, you're not going to make it very far. It's just, you need to be able to move past it. And if you want to work in a team that is on a shoestring budget, and therefore your every milestone and every action and decision that's being made is important, you can't work blindly, and you can't just throw an idea into the wind when there's a date. You can't do it. Let's say like September 4th, 1 month from now is the release date of my game. I can't just throw an idea into the wind and start prototyping some new feature for my game. No, we're content locked. This is bug fixing, this is finishing, localization, audio, things that I know aren't going to break the game and the gameplay. Can't do it. I think I found just a gem of a channel. Oh, you mean Tim Cain, right? I agree.
I don't know how to code.
Thanks,
I don't know how to do art. I don't know how to do all these things. And I have videos on that where I'm like, there are engines out there. There's art you can buy. There's scripts you can buy. There's a lot of AI coding assistance that you can get. You can do this. You're choosing not to. So the whole point of this video is I want you to think about that the next time you complain about a developer not taking risks, because it's not your money and it's not your confidence, and you seem unwilling to do that yourself. So maybe, I'm not saying don't make complaints. I have a whole video on how to give good feedback, but maybe you want to think about how high you dial it up before you complain about other people not taking risks, because taking risks are difficult and have a cost. And if you don't have those two S's, if you're not self-confident and in a good situation to take a risk, it's not going to happen.
Tim's right. Tim is when is Tim wrong, right? But Tim is right in that it's going to be tough, because I don't think you can ever convince the average gamer who is not ever meant to understand game development. That's not the point. They're customer. They don't make the games, but also, yes, developers do wish that gamers understood more of the complexities of why I can't just press the multiplayer button, like flip the boolean from false to true, and there you have multiplayer. I do wish it, though. Secretly I do wish that gamers just understood the complexities of it, or why when I tell them that we do not have the time to do something, that it's often not saying I don't wish I could do it. there was a good example of when I was working on the train game. I was the lead designer for this game, right? So there was a lot of responsibility for that job, and a lot of I also have a lot of leeway with what I decide for the game. And there are community members that one of them was very adamant that I was lying about how much time it would take to do something. And I was saying, hey, we would need to change every single level in the game to reflect this because they're all handmade levels. So if we change this system at this point in time, we would have to rewrite the entire all the levels, and we can't do that. And they were saying, well, no, you just implement this change and do it. I'm like, I don't have to say. Like, I agree. If I could just do everything perfectly the first time, I wish that I could. But we made the mistake. I fucked up. It's going to take too much time to fix now, and I'm not the one to choose that because we have a publisher. That's just kind of the reality of the situation. And, you take a risk in those early stages of high-level design, and I think that you often... You have a lot of developers and designers who forget that the high-level design is easy because well, it would be cool if blank. Well, now you don't need to ask yourself if it would be cool if you did X or Y, because the answer is kind of like, oh yeah, I could see that being cool. It's how do we actually implement this? How do we implement this in 2 weeks? How do we do it without having enough artists to actually implement it properly? Are there any corners that we can cut? And the reality is pretty much every game cuts corners because most games do not have the budget and the leeway to just endlessly sit in pre-production and prototype over and over and over until they have the perfect gameplay loop, and then they can just enter production perfectly. It just doesn't work that way as much as I wish that it did, and we would get way riskier games if that was the case. But if game company A can make quality game for $3 million and you're asking for $9 million to sit in pre-production for 3 years, I promise you that the investor is going to choose the $3 million one. Because even if it doesn't succeed, as well as yours might, it's less risk to choose that one than it is to choose yours. So until players start putting their money where their mouth is and funding risky developments, I don't think we're ever going to see risks being taken by developers because they cannot afford to take those risks. Unfortunately, I'm hoping that shift is being seen and we start to see, the success of like Schedule 1 of Expedition 33 shows that you can fund games for a small amount of money, and even Expedition 33 was not a small amount of money, right? It wasn't 33 people that worked on that game, it was over 100, but the core team is 33 and then they outsource where necessary. That's the smart way to do it, by the way. We need to start pushing more money into AA developers and indie developers because the risk is higher, but the return on investment is higher, and you can fund 100 indie games for $1 million each and pay one or two developers to sit in pre-production for a little while and cook up the proper gameplay loop, or you can spend $100 million on the next hero shooter that flops after 3 months. Which would you rather choose? And I think I know which one gamers would rather choose. We just need to convince the investors to choose. Small teams are the way to go. No, overbloated pipelines, the one sucking the budget. I mean, there's such a think of it this way. Like, you're right, by the way. I agree with you. If you hire one extra person, you're not getting 200% efficiency. You hire 3 people, you're not getting 300%. And that number diminishes over time, right? And especially if you cannot manage the number of people that you've hired, that drop off is going to be extremely severe. So having a small core dedicated team, outsourcing where you need to because you know that you don't have the budget or the full-time job to give to somebody who's doing, like, let's say your sound design, then you outsource that to somebody. You bring somebody on for a contracted period of time and you spend your money wisely. That's the way to do it, but it is hard to do, and you do need a good producer. I think that the one thing that Expedition 33 doesn't get its praise for is how well the production of the game was, because you can take 33 students. I promise I could take 33 students from game dev school, and I don't think I could manage them very well. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I'm not a producer. I'm not somebody who's great at managing a large team. I much more am better in a smaller role or a smaller team, and I'm trying to build myself up to that. But to make something that good, you need to be a great producer and a great manager of people, and you need to have the time to grow them. And if you don't have the time, you're just constantly crunch, 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 get the milestones done. You're not giving them the room to fail, to challenge themselves, even though it's going to take 25% extra time or 33% extra time. Techie Nut, thank you for the follow as well. Thank you guys so much for all the follows today. It's really great to meet you and to have you here. Games are not what they used to be. No, but even budgets aren't what they used to be. I don't know, it's such a different industry, and it changes, feels like it changes every 5 years. Didn't expect it from a former Ubisoft guy. If you work at a big AAA company, you're going to gain a lot of knowledge, and all the people that made those games successful usually do end up leaving and starting their own companies because they're like, look, I got the knowledge, I have the networks. I don't want to work for the corpos, for the suits.
Not going to happen. So I hope this makes sense. I hope this makes a good companion video to those caution ones. And I hope you guys have a good Friday.
Tim, I'm afraid that I'm watching this on a Monday, and it's very painful to hear. But we'll get through the week, right? No, I would even say management at Ubisoft is pretty great. I think that most AAA companies, when they're dealing with that many people, you actually have really good producers. The issue is where it's choosing where to put the money in and what value is going to be created for the players. And when you have a budget of like $300 million and you choose to put most of it into the artistry of a world, you're saying that the most important thing to this game is the creation of that world. And for a lot of the games that they've been making, I wouldn't say that that would be a pillar that I would define. If I'm making a game like Stalker 2, I do say that the world, the atmosphere, the immersiveness is core to the foundation of making a good Stalker game. I wouldn't necessarily say that with some of the games that Ubisoft or EA make. But you can also make it, like Stalker 2 was a AAA production, right? It was a very expensive game to make. It's just you know how to spend the money better. I mean, even Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, right? It is a sequel, so it's a little bit easier to make than the first game in a series. This game, I think, had a budget of, what was it, like $60 million? Which is a lot less than most AAA studios. And this is a AAA production as well. But they just knew how to spend money very well. They knew where to put the money. They had the plan going in. They knew exactly what they wanted to make. Did it. And this is, yes, you can say this is a great game, and this was made with a lot of love and passion, but I think you also have to give an equal amount of praise to the smart business spending and the good production and the care for the timeline that was put into it, because that's really what makes the big difference between a game taking $60 million and $80 million. And all of that is additional risk. If your game is $60 million, your investors want to see, $150 million. If it costs $80 million, they're going to want to see, let's say 250. So it's like it increases multiplicative in those cases. Saving even $1 million here, $2 million there, it sounds like a lot, but it's just people and time and efficiency that matters in the end goal. Either way, that was a great video. We can thank Tim again for that. That was a fun one. My voice is starting to die. I am tired. I am hungry. I need to go eat. But we will be on tomorrow. I'm going to go through all of the audio. Actually, let me end the YouTube recording there. So if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching that Tim Cain reaction. And of course, Tim, if you ever watch these, thank you for giving us permission to react to these. I hope that you enjoy them. And I hope that you have some good chocolate these days. Great lover of chocolate. Take care, YouTube.